Thing. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council. In 2009, the city embarked on the journey of beginning the Quality of Life Master Plan. Led by the City Council Subcommittee of Mayor Roberts and Mayor Pro Tem Washington, this effort originally began as a more conventional economic development strategic plan and was wisely steered in the direction of a more broad, encompassing visionary plan. The city has recently celebrated 20 years of cityhood, and it was the intent of this exercise to look out to the next 20 years and create a community plan and a community blueprint on what is important, funding priorities, and quantifiable, measurable results. It was this desire that the Quality of Life Master Plan, or Temecula 2030, effort was born. In June 2009, the city hired Applied Development Economics, or ADE, as the qualified consultants to guide the community visioning process. A great deal of work has been done over the last 2 years in gathering data, interviewing stakeholders, holding community workshops, and analyzing existing studies. This has now been synthesized and vetted through various workshops, commissions, and boards. To supplement this effort, the City Council appointed a Blue Ribbon Committee of community leaders in February of 2010 to serve as the community representatives and leaders to oversee the direction, input, and organization of the plan. The Quality of Life Master Plan is envisioned as an important and guiding roadmap that can be updated annually and used as a resource in setting community priorities. We have prepared a comprehensive presentation of the plan, yet before we jump into it, I'd like to turn it back over to the Quality of Life Master Plan Subcommittee of Mayor Roberts and Mayor Pro Tem Washington for their comments.
Okay, thank you. Well, my comments will be brief because we do have consultants and especially Councilmember Washington, who actually, there were some times I had to miss meetings because I was traveling or doing other things. And I have to tell you that Chuck Washington really understood what was going on and got us on track. This went a little bit longer than we thought it would, but there was a reason for that. We had turned it into something much better than it started out, and when all of a sudden it just kind of, the light went off, it all came together. And what you're going to hear tonight is something which we're going to use in the next 20 years or so to even make Temecula much better than it is now. So I'd like to turn it over to Mr. Washington for his comments, and then we'll go to our consultant comments.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It has been a labor of love. And I'd have to say my comments will be brief as well because we have some outstanding Blue Ribbon Committee members that will speak and give a presentation not only to the council but to staff and to the community, and I think you will be wowed by that. But going back to the birth of this, Ron and I serving as the Economic Development Subcommittee, which has been an honor and something that Ron and I enjoy doing together, we felt that there was a need for a strategic plan that addressed economic development, and both of us had come from serving on the EDC in the past, and we felt that that was the direction that we needed to go, but we weren't very far into that before we started realizing that all of the things that really make a community a great place to live are part of that, are part of that economic development strategy. And so we started trying to put some meat on those bones. Initially, I think we raised a few eyebrows because people were saying, well, you're talking about quality of life, but what does that mean? It sounds kind of squishy. And then as we formed our Blue Ribbon Committee, and they truly are not only representatives of certain segments of the community, but of the community. And it was important to have that input as a part of this process. But as we began to work through the details of it, And I don't know that we ever gained complete consensus on what those details should be because everybody had a different perspective. But that really turned out to be a good thing because we threw a lot of things up on the wall. Not all of them stuck. But it began to sort of take shape and take form and really become something that was not just software but hardware. But then as we continued to press forward towards the end of this thing, I've kind of come back full circle to where I really feel that we've arrived at something that is very visionary, that can really serve this community for the next 2 decades. And I'm inspired by it. I'm inspired by what everyone has contributed and inspired by sort of the beacon that it provides for us to maintain what we've come to love about Temecula and will continue, hopefully, to love about and improve upon in Temecula. So I think the presentation is going to be great. I hope that the council appreciates the efforts that have gone into this by staff, by the Blue Ribbon Committee, and so without stealing any of their thunder, as well as the consultant. I want to thank them all for their work, and I'll shut up.
Okay. Next, I'd like to bring the consultant up from ADE, Trish Kelly.
Good evening, Mayor Roberts, council members, staff, commission, and community members. It's very exciting for us to be here tonight. We were very excited when we were chosen to participate in this project, and now we're at the next stage of the journey on this evening. And as the mayor and council member Washington stated, it's been a long journey, but it's really been a great process. It took a little longer than we thought, but it took the right amount of time. So the mayor at our last meeting said it felt like the never-ending story, but I did remind him that never-ending story had a good ending. It had a happy ending. So that's how we feel, and we wanted to tell you that for us, ADE, we've done a lot of work in communities, cities, and counties across the state and the western United States. This has been a very special project for us because this community is special, and we would like to thank the council, the staff, and the community members for all of your participation, your commitment, your guidance, and your excellent work with us during these past 2 years. So for us, we felt like we were just supporting you in your process. This is your plan, and like I said, it's been a pleasure and an honor for us to be part of this process. And I'm very glad we had the opportunity to work with Herman before he left. So thank you for all your support and input. So as Aaron mentioned, we have been through a very inclusive long-term process that had many components. So it included more than 41 interviews with key stakeholders, and that was not just in the community, but your regional partners up through Riverside and down to San Diego and Orange County, because you are in a region and you're a very important part of that region. There were 3 community workshops with more than 100 members, and I think it was a very positive experience, and you'll hear about that this evening. We had 4 Blue Ribbon Committee meetings and a lot of input and back and forth, and we also did a lot of research and analysis. You have done a lot of master plans, but there are many other reports and documents for the region, and then we did a lot of analysis at ADE to enrich that. But one of the things that was really very interesting for us was all of the feedback that we got through the course of the planning process. You got a lot of input through emails and calls to your staff, and all of that was passed on to us. So it was a very iterative process, and to me, this is the hallmark of how this community works, and it shaped what this plan is today. The plan reflects a lot of the changes and the input that came in from the community. But to us, this process exemplifies how the city works. It plans very well, but it also leads and it serves, and it's very inclusive. In line with this approach, as Aaron mentioned, next slide, when the draft was finished, the plan was reviewed by several commissions in the Blue Ribbon Committee. So the document that you have reflects this additional level of input. So what I'd like to do now is turn it over to our 3 Blue Ribbon Committee members. Diana is going to talk about the community meetings and her experience. Morris Myers is going to talk about the Blue Ribbon Committee process, and John Kelliher is going to talk about the vision that was gathered and garnered through this process, which really reflects itself in the priorities of the plan. Diana?
Good evening, Mayor, council members, and staff. My name is Diana Lovett-Webb. I'm a 22-year resident of the Valley, and I have to say, public speaking, as I'm sure some of you may know, is not my normal strength because I tend to cry. And I thought I was really safe tonight.
Well,
not
everybody's
weeping.
crying, so.
So if my false eyelash starts to come down my cheek, I request that perhaps Councilmember Edwards just lets me know it's fallen off.
I'll watch you. I got your back.
Thank you. The purpose of the community workshops was to gather input, ideas, and thoughts from the community in order to accurately create a vision of what they wanted for Temecula. 3 sites were chosen. They were at the high schools in the city, so it covered all the geographical areas in Temecula. The process of the workshop was people came in and sat at tables, and then they introduced themselves to each other, and they got to name their table. And the mood was, people were very excited to be there. They were very positive. At times, as this process was going on, they were ebullient. It was really joyful. So that was a wonderful thing to see. But they received this pamphlet, and their first task was to describe what they loved today about Temecula. And and draw a picture, and you can see some of those in the back of your report. Some of the things that they described were the parks and the trails, the fresh air, the plethora of arts and cultural activities, our good school districts and dog parks. They love that the city is very well planned. They believe that Temecula has an aesthetic look that they really love. They love driving in. They love the split rail fencing. They love the natural beauty here, and they want to see that preserved. They are also loving what's happening in wine country and Old Town, and that the roads and the traffic are well handled. And one of the most interesting things was the history. People really appreciated that they live in a town with so much history that is honored. And all of these items that these people talked about were actually items that the city had started to put into place 20 years ago. So it was really fascinating to see come to fruition all the plans that 20 years ago you put into place. This is what people love about living here. Their next task was they had to write a newspaper article about something happening in 2030. And they stood up and shared those. Many of them talked about hospitals and an airport, and that the beauty has been preserved, and air quality. They talked about business growth. Again, there's some examples in your book. And after these community workshops, all this information was synthesized into categories and became the work that the Blue Ribbon Committee actually used as the basis, which Morris will tell you more about. But I wanted to share just some of my own personal feelings is that one of the things that you really learn here is that people have a feeling about Temecula. They don't just live here, they make a life here. And you can see that in their passion and the comments that they made. They want to see a city that addresses the arc of life, and so that they see a future for themselves as they age and for their children to stay here. And they want all of this. They want you to preserve what is here and expand those services for the future and address the future needs, but they want it to, while you maintain a small town feel. So I will turn this over to Morris Myers, who's going to talk about the Blue Ribbon Committee.
Thanks, Diana. Good evening, council members, commissioners, staff. My name is Morris Myers. I'm the Executive Director of the Economic Development Corporation of Southwest California and an 18-year resident of Temecula. As you've already heard related, a Blue Ribbon Committee consisting of key stakeholders within the community has been formed to provide input and vision about the city's future. This group is purposefully diverse in all aspects so that any and every idea had its champion. The first Blue Ribbon Committee meeting was held on July 14, 2010. The committee in the beginning was presented with a broad overview of the city's demographics, economy, livability, and sustainability. The committee was also presented with a summary of input from the community meetings that were held at locations across the city. Incidentally, several of the Blue Ribbon Committee members attended the community meetings in an effort to hear firsthand the thoughts of their neighbors. You can just imagine the breadth of information presented. In subsequent Blue Ribbon Committee meetings, this information had to be theorized, prioritized, vetted so that the city staff and ADE consultants could synthesize all the output of data into the semblance of a workable plan. After thoughtful and dedicated deliberation, we're here tonight to present that plan. Let me introduce John Kelliher.
Good evening, Mayor, council members, and fellow citizens of this remarkable community. My name is John Kelliher. I'm a 14-year resident of Temecula, and I've been coming here since the early 70s. I've raised 3 boys here, started 2 businesses, and I've served the community in a variety of ways, from coaching youth soccer to acting as chairman of the board for the Convention and Visitors Bureau. And I have to say, nothing's really given me more pride in this community than serving on this committee, and it's been a real pleasure, so I thank you for that. To help guide a process as comprehensive and multifaceted as the QLMP, you have to have a vision statement, a way of concisely expressing what it is that you're trying to accomplish, what you're undertaking. And I think in many cities, that sort of vision statement would be a reflection of the problems that the citizens see that need fixing. Not so in Temecula. In Temecula, as a reflection of the very positive feelings that we receive throughout the community workshops and within the Blue Ribbon Committee, our vision statement really said in a nutshell, we love this place. We love how it's been managed, and while recognizing the need to be progressive, we want to preserve and even accentuate the elements of our past and our present that give us our unique identity. So our guidance statement reads as follows. While protecting and preserving our vast beauty, honoring our historic past, and enhancing our community, educational, and cultural life, the residents of Temecula envision a dynamic community in 2030 that will become a vibrant, modern city with a small-town atmosphere. So with this vision of our future in mind, let's take a look at where we're going.
Thank you, John. Well, as you all know and you've experienced, many of you, Temecula has grown very rapidly over the last period of time, the last 20 years, and what is remarkable is the feeling of connection and sense of place that the community does feel. And that small town feeling means that people feel connected. And so your challenge in the next 20 years is how do you maintain all those great assets, but build on that as a platform for the future. There's a major transition underway for all places. The economy is changing, we're all facing new conditions and constraints, and Temecula is moving from building a city to sustaining a city, a vital, vibrant place to live, work, play, and live into your future, and as Diana said, to live through the arc of your lives. So while maintaining this, you want to be prepared for that next 20 years, and you want to keep ahead of the changes that are coming. There's a changing role for cities in the 21st century, and that's what really happened in the evolution of the conversation that we had during this planning process. What is Temecula's place in this future? So one of the things we did was we looked at the drivers of change that all communities need to be dealing with. Their demographic changes, the population is aging, and those of us in that cohort are more active in lifestyles, and we have new needs and preferences of how we want to live and be vibrant. There are many of our youth that's a very large age cohort, and you have raised your children here, and now you want to create a place where your children can stay, and the children are very interested in the kind of urban amenities that cities can offer. We're facing trends of more diversity, preferences, changing market preferences. People want to live and work in a different way. They want to have walkable communities. They want to have a lot of assets and things that really create this full picture of quality of life that Councilmember Washington mentioned. And those call forth things like new ways to get around, mobility, housing choices, and things like that. And then there are also changes in people's awareness of how we use our resources and interest in green economy, green markets, and green preferences, that we are more sustainable in our daily lives. So all of these things create new demands for cities and new market opportunities for our businesses, and I think that's one thing that Temecula has a really excellent opportunity, and you'll see that reflected in some of the goal areas. So we also are facing resource challenges. These are global demands for things like oil and water, and how can we make sure that the city has those so the city can thrive into the future? So all of the accomplishments that have happened to date, there are many and they're numerous, and they're reflected throughout the plan because we felt it was important to let the community know all of the things that you have been building, and all of the hard work you've done has resulted in many tangible things that make this place a great place to be. And that is the foundation for the next 20 years. And the Quality of Life Master Plan is the blueprint for this next phase of planning. One of the things I wanted to note, you'll see the tagline at the end of at the bottom of the slide, building greatness and maintaining excellence, and that again typifies the approach and the attitude and the spirit that the city embodies, and that tagline came about as a result of this planning process. So I think that's very noteworthy, and it's a great tagline. So what I wanted to just briefly describe for you is the layout of the master plan, which you have in front of you. One of the things I think that's really noteworthy about this plan is that it's very integrated, and it was hard for us to actually synthesize everything because everything overlaps and connects. So we tried to make those connections, but we tried to put some framework around the various chapters so that it was organized in an approachable way. There are 6 core values, which are basically 6 chapters. And we came to this process by looking at a lot of models and a lot of examples of planning processes. And I think what evolved here is very characteristic and community designed. It incorporates elements from other communities, the best of those things, but it's Temecula's plan. So I think that this plan creates the vision of a community that is a community in the fullest sense of the word. And it prioritizes what's most important for the community. And it sets goals that are very specific and tangible for the next 20 years. So you have to take a vision down to that next level. So the process evolved as we went along to a more specific focus on indicators as ways to benchmark where we are, where we're going, and how we can measure our progress to achieve those goals. So within each chapter, it explains what the core value is and why it's important. It sets out specific goals for that area and indicators that we can use to measure our progress. And again, we summarize the accomplishments in each of those areas. And then there are 2 sorts of baseline data. One is a survey that was conducted in 2007 of a citizen survey. And it asked citizens what they felt were most important to them about living in Temecula and what their priorities were for the things they wanted the community to invest in. And that data is going to be updated shortly. So that will be the next stage now where you can see and track changes. And then we developed an indicator dashboard, which is a very visual, quick snapshot of where you can see around a range of indicators about how the community is going. And I think unlike many other indicator reports, it actually sets goals and targets. So you have a place that you know where you want to go, and you can really specifically track how you're doing to get there. And then overall, we have strategic priorities for the next 20 years. And what we did was we also identified indicators that you might want to collect in the future because we don't always have the data that we need to collect things that are important for us. So we did actually find that we had several data gaps. So that will be something that the community will be working on. So what we'd like to do now is have each of the Blue Ribbon Committee members go over each of the chapters and explain in their own words what the goals and priorities are. And John is going to start. Thank you.
So our first core value that we identified was a healthy and livable city. And along the lines, the specific objectives within that core value included becoming a regional medical center. The breaking ground on the new hospital is obviously a major step towards that goal, and we want to continue that. We want to create accessible parks for seniors and for special needs children to augment the superior park systems that we already enjoy. We want to make sure that a healthy and active lifestyle comes naturally in our community. We'd like to foster higher education, and specifically, we identify partnering with CSU San Marcos to establish an urban campus. We would like to create a place where youth can be youth in a constructive and positive way. So we talked about building a teen village, creating a place where our teens can gather and do things that are constructive for the community and that are fun. We'd like to support local culture and artistic creativity. We'd like to ensure a variety of different housing choices for different economic levels, for different stages of life. We'd like to revitalize Temecula's aging commercial corridors. There's been a very successful revitalizing of our Old Town area, and the Jefferson Avenue is obviously the next area that's in need, and we understand that that has been started. We'd like to see that continue. We'd like to phase Old Town into a mixed-use and culturally rich downtown. Again, it's something that is well on the way, and we love the direction that that's heading as a community. And we'd like to establish a wilderness park, a place to enjoy our natural beauty in its natural form. And this wasn't on the list originally, but after attending this meeting, I have to add this as a specific objective. I think we'd like to retain Herman Parker, and I don't know if that's something we can put at this late stage, but it seems that that would get a lot of support. Our next core value was economic prosperity, and our goals for 2030. We'd like to provide an entrepreneurial culture, one that offers a growing number of diverse, high-paying jobs. We'd like to maintain a connection to the world via state-of-the-art citywide broadband network. Basically, we'd like to keep at the forefront of technology wherever that technology takes us. We understand that's crucial to our economy. We'd like to continue to protect the city's natural resources, continue to focus on clean industry, on attracting businesses that support our core values in their endeavors. We'd like to increase urban amenities for a dynamic and creative community, because dynamic companies that attract dynamic people and dynamic jobs appreciate dynamic and creative communities, so that's important to our economy. We'd like to foster the expansion of the CSUSM urban campus as a means of establishing our economic prosperity, because we understand that higher education and economic prosperity in communities goes hand in hand. And we'd like to become an internationally known tourism destination, and this is a topic I know quite a bit about. It's the business that I'm in. And although that may sound a bit ambitious to become an internationally known tourism destination, I can assure you first that we are well on our way. And a few other words about that, since it's my love and my avocation. Tourism tends to be a very clean industry. It tends to bring amenities like entertainment and activities for your community. And the most important thing from an economic standpoint, it brings outside dollars. From a purely economic standpoint, tourism is a way to persuade other communities, the people of other communities, to bring their hard-earned dollars, bring them to Temecula, and leave them here so that we can do the type of things that we want to do. The next two core values will be covered by Diana.
Thank you. The first core value I'm going to speak about is a safe and prepared community. And I'd like to reference a couple comments again from the community workshop. I felt it was really important to be their voice. People feel safe everywhere at all times in Temecula. That was a comment that was consistently mentioned in these workshops. They appreciate the visibility of police on the streets and in the shopping areas and in large public gatherings. They think that they do a great job coordinating parking and crowd control and egress and ingress at the large public events that we have. They really appreciate that the government has been very proactive in handling problems such as gangs and graffiti removal. And they love all the walkways and trails and sidewalks, and they feel safe on them, but there are some improvements that they would like. The Blue Ribbon Committee also added that school routes and crosswalks really need to be addressed and improved, especially now that busing has been cut to many schools. And to complete the walking trails so that there's an interconnectedness, not just on the trails, but throughout neighborhoods, and they can travel around. So our first goal is that continue to be one of the safest cities in California and the United States. And as Councilmember Washington mentioned, we were just voted the second safest city in America by the FBI. And we want to ensure that public funding for public safety remains a high priority. It can be said that one of the quickest ways to deteriorate or jeopardize the quality of life of a community is to become complacent complacent with public safety or to become unable to fund those necessary resources to maintain a safe community. We want to maintain a ratio of 1 officer per 1,000 population, and we want to promote community-oriented policing, as again was mentioned in the workshop. And a second set of goals is to achieve a city ISO rating of 1, to maintain a 5-minute response time for fire protection, to encourage the community to participate in public safety and emergency preparedness. And one of the most recent examples was the power outage that affected 1.5 million people. And it really proved that we that events like that could have the same effect as a natural disaster. And we really need to have our citizens be prepared, including networking with existing agencies and programs and service groups to have that all work out and publicize that. And we also want to provide recreational and other activities for our children and youth. And our last 2 goals is to minimize the impact to life, property, and the environment from natural hazards and emergency situations, and to provide effective enforcement of city zoning, building, fire, and grading codes, and graffiti abatement. In terms of a sustainable city, many of us might hear the word sustainable and we think it's really kind of trendy or it's all going to be about green issues, but this is a crucial goal to Temecula's future. Sustainable encompasses many of those esoteric ideas, but it's also has a variety of concrete goals, and they all overlap with many of the other core values that we've studied. Our working definition of a sustainable city is one which is responsible for the interconnectedness of 3 vital systems known as the 3 E's on your chart. The economy, for example, in the meetings, many people mentioned that they want to have enough kinds of professional and varied jobs so that our youth will stay here and create the next generation of people. In the environment, the single most mentioned item at all of those community workshops was air quality. People really want that maintained. And lastly is equitable. So the special needs park and access to technology was also something that they really felt was nice in Old Town. So it's crucial to maintain funding of these existing programs and assets and to add these additional services through both private and public funds. And then some additional goals for 2030 are be the most sustainable city in Southern California, ensure safe and sufficient water supplies for the 21st century, and maintain the city's high level of air quality. And I would like to introduce Morris, who's going to speak about the other core values.
So the core value, the 4th core value that we had was transportation, mobility, and connectivity. There's really a growing need as we move further into the 21st century. The first 4 goals are to coordinate land use and transportation, increase transportation and mobility options, expand and enhance the transportation network, and establish a connected pedestrian and bicycle transportation system. All these are expressed in some fashion in the circulation element of Temecula's general plan that we have now. From the continued development of mass transit, both within and outside the city, to the expansion of bicycle trails, walking trails, and horse trails, the vision from the beginning of Temecula as a city was to create the system. The priority in the future is to connect all this system to continue to have our healthy and livable city. Let me confirm what you're already thinking. Most of us heard from our neighbors, and what we think ourselves is not that change has to happen for what we've been doing. We just need to plan to do more of the same thing, only expanded. Maintaining a transportation level of Service D or better is what we strive for today. This is considered an absolute minimum level of service, but we must remember that this is what we want to maintain at the peak level of traffic congestion. And the final goal shows the desire for promoting local job growth in the 2-city region to reduce commuting by our neighbors. That speaks of both quality of life and our economic diversity. We want to have our talent here, keep it here at home, so that 2 strong dynamics are emphasized and realized, family and prosperity. The final core value was accountability, an accountable and responsive city government. This is critical for this plan to be fulfilled. Preparation of a comprehensive asset management plan, maintain a streamlined and flexible organization, create and maintain a comprehensive financial commitment to protect city assets through the formal asset management plan, expand the service measurement system that measures the city's effectiveness, provide the highest quality of service to all the community at the most cost-effective rate, promote innovation and adopt technology, and finally, provide consistently professional services and information to the community. Simply stated, the continuing need is for a highly professional city organization that thinks and acts in the best interest of its citizens. We have this now. We want to keep it for the future. These are our core values. These are what they were yesterday. These are what they are today. And this is what we want them to be tomorrow. Thank you.
I think you have fabulous Blue Ribbon Committee members, and I'm inspired, and thank you for that. So how are we doing after all that? We did all the planning, we set our priorities, but how are we doing? That's what you do with an indicator report, is you take the pulse and you see what you need to do to make it even better in the future. So as we described, there have been many great accomplishments over the last 20 years, and the 2007 citizen survey showed a very high level of satisfaction in most areas, and you'll see that in the graphics in the report. What we did note is that there are some differences between what people said were their priorities for the things that they wanted to have spending on, or what they were willing to spend, and where they valued the investments for quality of life. So you may see some differences and things that you might want to explore as you go into the next survey. The indicator dashboards, there are 6 dashboards, and altogether they total 60 indicators. And in 28 of the areas, the indicators meet or exceed the city's goals. 23 show progress in the right direction, and only 9 show improvement. As you continue in this process, you may start tracking other indicators, and you may find some changes there, but you've got a great baseline to go forward. This chart is an example of what a dashboard looks like. It's hard to read here, but the main points is that you can look at the columns and see where you stand. So the right-hand column is the area that needs improvement. So in this particular one, safe and prepared community, the city rates very well. They either are meeting their goals or they've made a lot of progress toward meeting the goals. And as I mentioned before, I think one of the unusual things about what this process does is it sets the goal, but it also tells you what the range is in each of the areas, so you know where you fall in that process. So I think it's really an excellent baseline and guideline as you go forward. Well, a plan is great, but once you have a plan, you need some way to implement it. So I think that's another unique feature of this Quality of Life Master Plan, is that there's an implementation timeline. And that is really getting down to the nuts and bolts and the tangible things, the things that you heard the Blue Ribbon Committee members talked about, have all been now, those priorities, placed in a very specific timeline over the next 20 years. And they're kind of laid out in a period of 5 to 10 year increments, so that you can see what you're accomplishing, and you can check them annually, but at the end of each major time period, you can see how you're doing. And that is really the city's blueprint. That is how you can all check and measure yourself to see that you're accomplishing the community's priorities. These projects will be funded in a variety of ways. Some will be city projects, some will be privately developed, and some will be partnerships. And public-private partnership models are a very good way to fund a lot of what the community aspires to. The timeline for a lot of these projects will change as you go along. It will be based on budget considerations, but also changing community priorities. So this whole process is a very iterative, ongoing, dynamic living process. I think that what's reflected in the timeline is a very balanced set of community priorities. The master plan is very rich, and there are a lot of things in there. So we really tried to make sure that every aspect of the core values was addressed in the implementation plan. Underlying that, you'll see is in the blue is an asset management plan that is going to be implemented next year, and that's really your business plan to manage all of the assets that you've built over the last 20 years and that you want to maintain and enhance in the next 20 years. So you can see how it goes out over the next 20 years. So how will this master plan be used? Well, the timeline is very tangible, specific thing that will be used by the staff and the leadership to guide the budget and planning process and the capital improvement plan. You will be using that, or we recommend that you use these in this way. For the mid-year budget review, the resident survey that will be conducted will provide a benchmark for you and a checking point, and that will be conducted every 2 years. That's about to be implemented, and you'll have the data in the early part of 2012. We also recommend that you update the quality of life master plan internally every year, and then you update in a major way every 5 years, because you will find that you've accomplished some things, many major things, but you may want to shift where your investments and priorities are. And you will have a lot of ways to get that community process. But the update would include, we would recommend a community planning process again with the community meetings and other ways to get the input. As you probably know, the city has a website that's dedicated to the plan, and so I think there'll be a very robust way for the community to continue to provide input. And that's the way this community works. You're very engaged in the community, so I think you'll be hearing from the community about how you're doing. In summary, I would just like to say that ADE believes that Temecula stands out as a community for its commitment, dedication, and excellence in performance and in the stewardship of the community that you have for now and into the future. We just feel, for us, it's been an honor to work with you, the staff and the community. Temecula is a model, and we're committed to helping you implement the plan. We've already had an experience last week. We participated in a workshop at UC Irvine, and Dale West from the planning department came over, and it was fabulous. They were so appreciative that he came over, because communities are trying to figure this out, and you have a lot of tangible experience, and they could see what Temecula has to offer, and they were very appreciative of that. In 2030, we think that the community is going to look back and look at the work that you've all done, and they're going to be very appreciative, and we think you're going to be very proud of what you accomplished. So, again, I want to thank you for this opportunity, and we in the team, to answer any questions you may have. So thank you again.
Thank you. Any questions?
That's amazing.
I think you've answered everything.
Oh, okay.
That was great.
Well, that's easy.
Wow.
No, thank you very much.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
I just have one question, and really, a lot of comments, and I'm looking forward to commenting. What a comprehensive bunch of information that was put together. And of course, the committee kept the council and staff abreast along the way. And I didn't necessarily catch this along the way, but I'm curious, did the Blue Ribbon Committee look at 2030 as it related to houses of worship, promoting houses of worship here in Temecula, churches, mosques, synagogues, things of that nature, and where we want to be in that regard? Did that ever come up? We looked at education, we looked at economics, we looked at everything. That was probably if I was to pick one thing that didn't come up, that didn't come up.
I think maybe it didn't get expressed specifically as houses of worship, but it got expressed very much as a place where all people would feel welcome, and that the community embraces diversity in all its forms. So I think that that's implicit in what your question.
Mike, I would have to say, in one of and it may have been our first Blue Ribbon Committee meeting, we had the walls covered. It was over in the old City Hall, with notes that were being taken as ideas were being thrown out. And there was discussion about religion, about spirituality, and I think we were looking for strengths and weaknesses, kinds of things, areas that we wanted to focus in, sort of tailoring it. But I'm not sure that it rose to the degree where it became a core value in a sense. But certainly I think it was expressed, but expressed in a more, in less of a tangible way, I guess. I think maybe Trish probably already said it better than I can say it.
and I want to keep it on the question front because I know we're going to get the comments. A few years back, about 6 years ago, the city prepared a workbook, a handbook to hold the hands of churches to process their development permits, their development plans through the city. And it was a priority for us. I'm not certain if it rose up to the city council level. It might have. I know there was a city council presentation, and I know, Mr. Nelson, you were instrumental in helping David Michael work on that. And I guess the question I ask, and maybe we can have it in dialogue, is in 2030, from the point of view of houses of worship. And by the way, let me make it real clear. This is not a critique of this document. You guys have done a fantastic job. So let me be very clear. But in 2030, when it comes to houses of worship, or how do we see the city? That question maybe we can have some dialogue on.
Okay,
That's my only question.
Okay. Mr. Comachero.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Let me first start off by echoing Mr. Nagar's comments about the quality of this work. It's just absolutely spectacular. To the consultant team, to the Blue Ribbon Committee, certainly to my colleagues here on the subcommittee, I can just visualize this going forward and seeing where and that's the purpose. This is a roadmap for where we're going to go. And so thank you to everybody. At the same time, as you said, it's not a critique. I do believe we're here to discuss maybe how we could make it a little better if anyone agrees that we should add or subtract anything. So I'm going to inject it's a long way of saying I'm going to inject my comments. I firmly believe, and many of us here have been here from the beginning of the city, or very close to the beginning of the city, that what creates the reaction that you got from our citizens, that positive reaction, the same positive reaction we've seen, thankfully, for a long time, is not just that we have a lot of amenities and not just that our citizens have the opportunity to live, work, and play in a high level here, but as an example, when we built this civic center, we didn't just build a civic center, we built this. When we built the community theater, we built a spectacular community theater, and the same with the Children's Museum, very innovative. When we built the Pat Birdsall Sports Park, we built the best darn sports park anywhere. Same for the library on Paba Road. Where do you see a library of that quality at that kind of a location? And I think we're missing the boat a little bit by not saying somewhere in this plan that, call it the vision, call it the guiding principles, call it whatever it should appropriately be called within the context of the document. But I think we need to say that. We need to say that our objective is not just, as I was looking through the timeline here at some of the facilities that are on there, we don't want to just build a new tennis complex. We want to build a great tennis complex. We don't just want to build an aquatics facility. We want to build a great aquatics facility. Same can be said for the teen village and the other things, especially the teen village in my mind. And I don't see where we say that here, and to me that's very important and should guide everything we do, and words like high quality, innovation, imagination, uniqueness, somewhere in the document I think those words should be included, or better words if you can find them, that really signify what we hold dear, and it's not just that we do a lot, it's that we do a lot wonderfully, and we don't want to give that up. So that's my only comment, but again, kudos to everybody. It's just a wonderful document.
Thank you. If I may respond to that,
I have a question.
may I respond to that comment?
Mr. Mayor.
Go ahead.
I'd like to respond to Councilmember Comachero's
Yes, go ahead.
comment. I absolutely agree. I think that's one of the things that makes the community stand out is the vision is very high, the bar is very high, and you've accomplished that. And I was looking back at our notes from 2 years ago when we started, and we kind of did a roundtable with the staff and the subcommittee about what ideas were, and they were high level, but kind of just ordinary, basic kind of things. And the weaving together of this plan over the last 2 years has elevated, and I think that's what the master plan is. It's a very high level. It's very aspirational because and that's where the notation of building excellence and building greatness, I think, embodies that. And I agree with you. That's our impression, is that that's what you've accomplished, and that's what you will accomplish, and that's the hallmark of the way the community works. So we could have called that out more, and thank you for that.
And thank you for agreeing. It's not just that we feel that way, we need to say it, was my point. So
No,
thank
no,
you
I
for that.
think that that's noteworthy.
Mary Ann.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is absolutely phenomenal, and thank you to the committee members. You've really left no stone unturned. It's interesting that as we set a master plan, as we often do, we build into those, or I'm asking this in the form of a question, do we automatically build into those master plans the flexibility to meet the needs and accommodate the needs of the day as the residents who participate in the ongoing process? So we know that it's a living and breathing document and plan. It's actually more of a roadmap. But did you feel like you built in enough flexibility for the future? And of course, it's at the discretion of the council and the residents as well.
I do think so. I think that was the way we approached it, that it would need to be something that would be flexible because conditions and circumstances change and priorities of the community change. And I think with the staff saying that, they thought it was really important to do the community survey, that's a more formal way of getting the input in addition to the informal ways that you have, that's a check and a balance to be able to allow you to do that. So I feel that you've built that flexibility in while providing some structure.
And I ask that in the context of the fact that we know we've already been petitioned by areas that are within our sphere of influence. We've been petitioned by Silverhawk, for example, it's no secret because we did a study, to be annexed. So are we taking those kinds of things into consideration? Because doing something on that scale really does change the complexity of the community and the complexion of the community too, so.
We did look at projections out for population, and your population growth has exceeded earlier projections, so you're on a pace. So, and that then when you add the possibility of annexations, there needs to be a lot of community dialogue, obviously, about how that changes the community and how you maintain the characteristics of the community. And this is really, we had a lot of discussions about what does this growth look like, and what does our community form look like, and how can you revitalize areas also within the footprint of the city that reflect these new realities. So I do believe that, honestly, the staff is fabulous. I've never worked with a better staff, and I think that they plan for contingencies.
We know that. Yeah, but thank you.
Mike.
Are we at comments now, or are we still at questions?
Questions? We can go to comments if you like.
Okay, well,
I like your idea about what you said about the churches.
Thank you.
I think you're right.
Thank you, and I think it's important because it is a core value of in our community, and with no respect to religion. It's not a respect of religion.
But it should be there.
And then I like Mr. Cambachero's comment as well, and reason for that is I know what you're talking about. It's almost an invisible quality that has been adapted by this community, its citizens, its staffs, and its councils that have decided that we're going to do things great and always found a way to do things great. How do you get that on paper? We have to find a way, but that is our philosophy. And it's reflected in the community that we've built. On the same hand, it's almost as if you as a consultant are coming in and you recognize it, and sort of the whole document reflects it. I get what you're saying. The whole document sort of reflects it. But I think also we want to send something to, when we're long gone, okay, this was the philosophy that we want you to take forward. Don't just build a theater. You got to build a great theater. Don't just build a teen center. It's got to be the best ever.
Every time.
And that's my 2 cents. And my last comment is, Mr. Washington, I know that you brainchild this and then you partnered with Mr. Roberts. Phenomenal job. It morphed into something that was much, much more than we ever thought it would be. And boy, this will go hand in hand with our general plan. And beautiful, beautiful document.
Mr. Washington.
Thank you, Mike. I'm absorbing what you were talking about. And interestingly enough, and I don't think I shared this with you, but back in the spring I finished a master's degree in public administration, and it required that I write a thesis. And I wrote a 40-page thesis on that subject.
Did you?
That you just asked the question about how in the public administration process, do you honor and respect, religious land use? Of course, this council has had a couple of challenging council meetings in dealing with that issue. But I found it fascinating and wanted to write about it. And I'm looking at the QLMP here, and I'm wondering if what you're asking about can be woven into core value number 1, a healthy and livable city. If maybe, maybe a stronger mention of that in that very first core value. Because for many of us, that defines whether a community is livable or not. Recently, I met with some staff about some things going on in our community, and I don't want to get sideways with the city attorney and start talking about something off the agenda, but I said, it's almost as if like we have our asset management plan, that we need a value management plan, that sort of identifies those values that are important to the community, so that it gives us something to target, so that everybody kind of knows this is what we're about as a community. And so I just throw that out because it's part of the dialogue that I've been having and things that I've been thinking about. So I like your comments.
Well, too, more than ever, we're seeing churches, regardless, churches, temples, whatever you want to call them, regardless of their religious persuasion, operating in schools, operating in auditoriums, operating in rec centers of HOAs. They're trying to expand. They're just looking for ways to expand. It is a core of our community, and I can't imagine in 2030, and I know we're all seeing the same thing, that people in our community leave this community, to go to houses of worship somewhere else. Just doesn't fit in. Just like going to school or just like working. Yeah.
Okay. Any other comments? Okay. Well, let me say, the Blue Ribbon Committee members, Diana Lovett-Webb, Morris Myers, and John Kelliher, thank you very much for participating. It's nice to have feedback like we've gotten today and tonight. I mean, this is, it's amazing how this whole quality of life master plan kind of all of a sudden turned around to where at one time we were just kind of shaking our head, okay, and then all of a sudden we got the final report and it all made sense. And I don't know how that happened other than, I think Trish did one heck of a job getting it together, but it all came together. And, now we've got a document we can work with, and I suppose in the future we'll tweak it a little bit and probably add what Mr. Nagar wants, because I feel the same way. So.
I have one final comment. If we try to sum up what makes Temecula, and we talk about this a lot, not just at City Council, but with friends and neighbors and colleagues and things, and they say, how can you maintain a city of 105,000 and still make it feel like a city of 10,000? And I think one reason is that we all grew up here as volunteers, and I'm looking out in the audience, and I know people who have been volunteers in this town for 20 years, 22,
When you say
3.
grew up, you don't mean like from elementary school.
No,
you
but
mean from young adulthood.
yeah, but we grew up as the city grew, and I think that there was never a time when I felt uncomfortable coming to speak at a workshop or participating in a workshop or on a steering committee or coming to talk to the school board or attending a council meeting, that I really felt like and I didn't always agree with everything that everybody said, but even so, I always felt like I was respected and my opinion was valued. And I think that is really key, that our residents feel like, whether they agree with us or not, that we value their opinion and we value their input, and that it is paramount to maintaining that small town feel. I think they need to feel like that they're listened to, and then to see the results of what they're bringing to us. So I really think that's key. That's something that you can't put in a bottle, you can't put labels on it, but I think every governing body and group in this city needs to continue to go out of its way to entertain public opinion and respect the residents' opinion and business owners' opinion. And I think that's one thing that's conducive to making us feel like a small town. People still feel like they can make a difference, and they really can make a difference.
And we really have some real quality people here, don't we, in Temecula?
We do.
So,
Thank you, guys.
well, Mr.
Okay.
Mayor, if I,
Okay.
oh, I'm sorry, are you done?
No, I was just going to say what the recommendation of staff is. Go ahead.
A couple of things. There was a whole other group of people who were on this committee that are mentioned in the document that boy, really did a good job along with you guys, and so a good kudos to them. I was going to frame a motion, if I may, and that is to adopt this very well-prepared document, at the same time send it back to the committee for an insertion of a core value relating to houses of worship, as we discussed, and also capturing Councilmember Camachero's mention. I'm not certain where you'd want to put it, Councilmember Camachero, and if you have a preference where it goes.
I think it goes rightfully in the executive summary, but if there's a better place to weave it, I don't have a problem. I just want to make sure that as we go through the next generations of leaders in this city, that they see it in the document in an appropriate place.
And perhaps even, again, with your concurrence and concurrence with the subcommittee, maybe you say just that this conversation took place, that the council, wanted to note that exceptional desire, so.
I'd be very comfortable with that.
Right.
I would second that motion, and I think Mr. Nagar, Mr. Camachero, those two things will be very easily achieved.
I know.
I think the statement about excellence probably was implied, and because we've all become sort of accustomed to that, it almost like, well, do we have to say that?
Right.
Yeah.
We don't have to say it to ourselves, but we should say it to those 20 years from now.
Yeah, and I don't disagree with that. And so it's nice to say that our standard is a standard of excellence. And I'm sure there's a way of weaving that in, and I don't know that we have a whole lot of work to do to get that into that core value number one, that notion of making a place
I want to
for.
adopt it tonight. There's no reason to bring this
Well,
back.
the recommendation is approve in substantial form.
Right, oh, good.
So that gives us actually some leeway
Good.
to even make recommendations of some changes. Those are easy ones, I think. But certainly, Ron and I'll be happy to meet together again.
Sure.
And I see nodding from our Blue Ribbon Committee members, and I see Trish nodding, so I know they're all on board.
Okay. Madam City Clerk, do you have this all down? I think we understand. And
Yes, sir, I do.
Okay, all right. Okay, then I'll need a motion.
You got a motion and a second.
Oh, that's right. Where was I?
We're voting.
Call for the question.
Call for the question. Let's vote.
Good job.
There we go, 5-0.
Job.
Beautiful job.
Thank you,
Great.
everyone.
Yeah.